Dr. Adam Stone.
Woo, 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 woo!
Woo!
20 questions I desperately want answered. How are you today? Have you accepted the same personal savior as the person who knocked on your door this weekend while you were trying to find a pornography that excited you without seeming to exploit the type of person you're attracted to? Because how could you be turned on by the objectification of your ideal sexual partner? Are you some kind of pervert for finding joy in the failure of people you've always believed were mean to you for no reason? Your first or second or seventh grade teacher asked you to write a mission statement about who you were and what you intended to become. And you said something like astronaut or doctor or fourth chair violinist in a chamber orchestra that plays at charity events you could never afford to attend as a guest. Do you remember if you really meant whatever it was you wrote down, or whether you were just saying whatever you could think of that would get someone to let you sit at their lunch table without rolling their eyes at you? Why do we constantly seek to segregate ourselves from our friends by the color of our beliefs and the intentions of our gender until we are a frozen landscape that future scientists would love to study but are unlikely to build homes near? Are you okay? A face in motion tends to stay in motion, talking at people who are maybe not so terribly interested in what that face is saying, but a face at rest is so easily misunderstood because it's hard to constantly focus on seeming happy without the type of medication that is currently melting the liver of the constantly smiling man in the frozen food section who is worried about the scowl that you don't even realize you're wearing in December. And scowls in December are like white pants after Labor Day, so why don't you just smile for everyone but yourself? Why do we talk about the pressure to perform as though our body was filled with the potential for success that is constantly trying to escape us? As if an A+ on a final exam was inflating like a tumor behind our carbonated eyes, or that the proper grip of handshake at the first job interview since your parents stopped paying your phone bill might crush the hands of the creepy middle manager in the one-bedroom apartment who is just as worried about how he's going to both eat and afford his Subway card this month as you are. Why do we associate any of these things with the word pressure? A person cuts you in line at the pharmacy while you were talking on their cell phone about the final episode of a TV show that you have just finally surrendered to watching, and now you know that the character you hate is going to die in the end. And it would have been so much more satisfying to have experienced that death as a surprise, as though he could have been immortal. But now you know that character, like most of the people you love, is going to die before you do. And you had to hear it from some sharp-laughed hyena who neither understands the definition of the word spoiler nor how a line works in a public space. And it just makes you want to explode at them, which reminds you that your doctor mentioned something about your blood pressure and what kind of God or science would fill our bodies with such a volatile substance. Do you believe in a higher power? Do you believe in a lower power? What if the power is the same level as you? Does power make you a god? What if reincarnation is real and we are living precisely the life we wanted in our previous life, except we were maybe just as lazy in that life and forgot to fill in some important details, and every blank page we left has been lined with misery? Is that better or worse than if this is precisely the life we thought we deserved? Why do we ask questions like, what kind of music do you like? When we know that music is more than just a series of categories that radio station owners of the 20th century slapped on sound so that they could market themselves to a variety of people who never learned to think for themselves and who think baby is an acceptable word to put in a song to disguise the fact that the singer is terrified you'll find out that they're gay or straight or a gerontophile or whatever it is that they're into that might cause the listener to realize that the singer will never love them, or worse, that their experience, while similar, isn't precisely the same as theirs, and who can be bothered to listen to music that isn't written specifically to appeal to them as individual consumers of stories? What is the mean temperature of fear? Why are mean and average nearly synonymous? When I make a joke at the expense of someone I love because I feel they've known me long enough to be certain that I'm kidding, am I ignoring their feelings for themselves or acknowledging their feelings for me? Is there a difference? So that's the first poem. It's from my last long form book, The End of Lucidity. I'll be doing hopefully mostly poems from Whales with Legs, which is like 4 different manuscripts I'm working on that I haven't finished yet. and I took the poems that I really liked and are finished and turned them into a small book. So I'll be reading many things from that, I expect. So last night I did a feature in Manchester, and a lot of it was about a few years ago. I was attacked by a hot tub and was briefly in a coma and was hospitalized for a while, and read a lot of poems about that last night. Not really going to do that tonight. But one of the projects to get myself writing again was I asked people to ask me 5 questions, and I would make a chat book answering those 5 questions. So I'm going to read 2 poems, one from one chat book and one from another. This was a question by Michael A. Burstein, who asked me, have your recent experiences made you appreciate life more? A moth seeking the moon is not expecting a bug zapper. Wings singed by something alien that seemed desirable. Wings singed, but not scarred, not dusted, electric. Will the moth ever want the moon again? Will it see bug zappers in every human's eyes? The bug zapper has no eyes, no desires, no prejudice, no hatred. A bug zapper is only the tool of someone else's wants. It maims and kills because it was designed to maim and kill and shock. It does not know or care about the moon. It does not wish it had eyes. It does not wish. It does not even know that moths exist, though it has killed many and injured many more. The moon is not involved. It knows nothing of moths or bug zappers. It knows nothing. It is a rock without moths, a deer without ticks, an ocean without bacteria. It's not even what the moth actually wants. What the moth wants is the sun, which is what gives the moon its luster, but the moth has spent its life believing the moon gives light. The wing-singed moth still zeppelins the yard where the bug zapper lives, currently, perhaps unplugged, unhungry, a safe metal ornament to sit on. So the Michael A. Burstein questions were all really serious and not as fun to answer as I have a very short chat book. None of the poems are probably making it into a future manuscript, but Sam Cha was a fucking wise ass. And instead of asking me serious questions, he asked me karma chameleon, comma chameleon, calm a chameleon, coma chameleon, karma chameleon. So this is calm a chameleon. If only I could rapidly extrude my tongue, prehensile my tail, move each eye for optimum optical advantage, be so unique and awkward that I actually blend into any surrounding. Wikipedia can offer you the latest theories as to how chameleons chameleon. I don't know the science. I don't know the hows and whys of changing appearance to regulate temper, temperature, attractiveness, or really anything. I rarely change on purpose. If I happen to peer with my environment or stonewash denim in an orange cone society, it is almost definitely an accident. I am rarely comfortable enough to look comfortable. Whoever is. And if I am not comfortable enough to calm myself, however am I supposed to sail a contradiction? However am I to relax my pigment enough to appear relaxed? Thanks, Rich. Everything else is pretty much plays on Karma Chameleon and Do You Really Want to Hurt Me from the Culture Club. And I will include this picture of the Culture Club from their glory days. And of a chameleon in a suit, because, I mean, why not? All right, back to recent stuff. So I've been writing a lot of personal stuff recently, but to kind of make my brain work a different way, I wrote a title down and decided to see where that took me. And it's important for you to know that this is not a true story. This is called, I kept wishing for my grandfather's death, but it was always his wives who kept dying. All of the hatches were battened. The anchors dropped. We placed the sturdiest fenders between us and prepared to answer the hurricane's incessant knocks. The captain would always arrive early, stare down his genetically bound crew until he reached me, the youngest, the adopted, the probable spy sent to rob him of everything he loved. The rumors of my frequent tantrums were exaggerated, but not untrue. I don't remember the first time I wished the captain would just die and free us all to find sturdier ships, or, captain forbid, a piece of land to call our own. I was 13 when his second wife, his first wife was the sea, was accidentally shot out of the cannon she'd been sleeping in. None of us know for sure that she died, but we never saw her again. His third wife leapt out of the crow's nest in a storm rather than try and carefully crawl down the slippery mast to the deck she was sure she would die on. His fourth wife got her foot caught in the anchor line and was yanked into the sea in one of the most spectacularly violent cartoonish motions ever not recorded on camera. None of us even met his fifth wife. And the sixth showed up in a wig that smelled so much like French fries that she was carried away by seagulls. All of these women had names, and BC, before captains, lives and families. But we were never allowed to learn of them because the sea was the captain's first mate, and none of the rest of them would share his plot in Davy Jones' locker. I'm going to remember his second wife as Rebecca. She loved squirrel hunting and accidentally stepping on her grandchildren's toes. His third wife was Violet, heiress to the Morton salt fortune. She sang like a screaming frog and kissed like a drunk Saint Bernard. His fourth wife was nameless. She had a name. It was nameless. Her parents grew truck trailers in Arkansas, and after she died, they painted her likeness onto mud flaps. That's what her father called her when she was still in diapers, to memorialize her. I don't know anything about Gloria. His sixth wife was Tankini. She was the first to figure out that I had accidentally murdered each of the captain's previous wives trying to kill him. I let her escape. His seventh wife was Georgia. We worked together, salting his meals with broken glass and rosary peas until the only insult he could roll off his tongue was his own choked blood. Georgia had the most beautiful smile as we hurled her late captain back into the always open arms of the only love that ever mattered to him. So yeah, we do the Saturday night poetry exchange every week. Sometimes there's themes. There are some weeks where we do just plain old poetry exchange, which is people send me poems, or if someone else is running the reading that week, people send that person a poem, and then those poems are redistributed to the other readers. So you get to hear other people read your poems. 1 week, a poet that I hadn't heard for a while sent me a poem, and I decided to render that poem back to front and render all but the first and last lines into their opposite meanings. So this is that poem. It's called Pandemic Aphorisms, and it's a rendering of a Jeff Stumpo poem called The Shoemaker and the Elves. His mouth full of nails, a king searches for his humanity in his full paunch. Morning breaks history's cheapest nostalgia across his clear conscience. A king's foot was once 12 inches long. Now it's an economy of rumors, a measurement without rulers. All of us are blameless when dressed in our best intentions. Callous science cannot move mountains of conjecture. The shoe trees are coming in plentifully this year, enough yield to pacify every hungry mouth. Succulent separatism sours. A familiar dissonance is a nursery rhyme you can't parse, but know all the words to. 70-year-old newspapers with today's headlines. Recycled snake oil bombs the dog's whistler. Pagans in Pentecostal apparel cosplay gods, feign, fey. Conch removal as overt metaphor. Heart, a fist of thistles and fistula. A sleeping nation shams woke, but refuses to focus their gaping eyes. Soon, gilded bill collectors fresh from the temple of themselves will call 12 inches a mile, insist this be the new elementary curricula. Will it fly? Well, maybe in a nation that's forgotten gravity. Imperial is no longer a form of measurement in most developed nations. Jobs and titles worth less than the business cards they're printed on. Salesmen of the empty emotional warehouse, breathless from a good ribbon. Everyone's full of death if you hit them in the right spot. There are nights when you boil in your own leather. So yeah, that's a rendered poem. I do recommend that people check out the work by Jeff Stumpo. I think he has a few books available. I don't think that poem is in any yet. It's called The Shoemaker and the Elves, but it should be. I think, Rich, did you publish Jeff Stumpo? I don't remember.
I feel like I did. It's some time ago. My memory should be better.
All right. So for Rich, and I was going to do this anyways, there is a fantastic writer currently out of Maine named Catherine Weiss. She has a book on Game Over Books called Horse Girls, Wolf Girls? Is it Wolf Girls?
Yeah, she
Horse
featured
Girls.
here. Horse Girls versus Wolf Girls. She featured here, yeah.
Amazing. And one of the things she's done is she's invented a form that I really enjoy called the Rex. And the directions for the Rex are as follows. Stanza 1 is a factoid from history or science. Stanza 2 is a personal commentary on the factoid. Stanza 3 is a digression. Stanza 4 is a reckoning. And stanza 5 is just a repetition of stanza 2 with new meaning and context. This is the first poem in a book that I'm still working on like 2 years later called I Just Want Every Teacher to Live. It's called Appreciation. The shadow blister effect is a visual phenomenon in which a shadow bulges as it approaches another shadow. It takes place when two objects are at different distances from the light source. The object nearest the light source begins blocking the light from the more distant object so that it appears to reach out and pull the other object's shadow into it. Mrs. Taylor taught every aspect of school to our kindergarten class. Reading, math, art, museum, art, music, gym, story time, recess, everything. I remember only 3 things about her, besides her appearance. She owned a player piano that she used when hosting sing-along field trips to her house. She hastily built a platform out of chair legs and wooden pallets the day roaches invaded our school during morning session. And once a week during nap time, she would select one child to pose for a silhouette drawing, where she would shine a light on your profile and trace the shadow. She would hold on to it for a week, adding details from memory, your eyes, your smile, the shadow of your sundial nose. The further from the moment she turned the light off, the more your silhouette resembled your face. What do you say? She asked after she turned off the light. It looks good, I replied. No, what do you say? I'm staring at the light bulb as it grows dark. I like it, she sighs. Close. Thank you. I smile. You're welcome. She sighs. Thank you. I smile. Thank you? She smiles. You're welcome. Thank you became a mantra to every teacher, every friend, every relative. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. Mrs. Taylor says I should say thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. I am a player piano of appreciation. Don't ever again want to feel like I haven't shown proper thank you. Tell me how I can thank someone properly. Everyone does so much for me, even when I don't know how to ask. Thank you. Thank you, every Mrs. Taylor, for trying to make me look more like I felt inside when I was still a child, for being patient with my bewilderment at what people wanted from me when all I wanted was everyone to be happy with me. Thank you. Mrs. Taylor taught every aspect of our school to our kindergarten class. Reading, math, art, music, gym, story time, recess, everything. Once a week, During nap time, she would select one child to pose for a silhouette drawing, where she would shine a light on your profile and trace the shadow. She would hold on to it for a week, adding details from memory. Your eyes, your smile, the shadow of your sundial nose. The further from the moment she turned the light off, the more your silhouette resembled your face. All right, another thing that I have been doing recently to kind of like inspire myself to keep writing is that I will take a line, you're welcome, Rich. I will take a line from a poem that I'm reading and make it a title and see where that takes me. I did a bunch of these with Philip B. Williams' Thief in the Interior, which is a book I highly recommend. And this poem takes its title from a line by Philip B. Williams. His poem is called Final First Poem. And the title of my poem is, I suspect my index is on fire. Everything unrequited is left on the curb in front of a stranger's house with all of my reggaeton, my rabble, the most exhausted canaries plucked from the word ribcage. All of my fingers, once pointing at treason, now leaves curled in on themselves. Someone rewrote the book of conundrums, and all I remember is being this saccharine smile of rotting teeth, a carbonated laugh. All of my tragedy, a book I read but forgot to take notes on. According to my calendar, I've been 1980s pop since 2019. A synthetic bass line fuzzing up the most predictable sing-along, dance-along lyrics. Now that I have all the moves figured out, my clockwork is winding down, and I've got this flotsam where my jetsam should be. For the first Christmas of the pandemic now, my last love presented a box of magnetic poetry made from all the words I overused before I met him. Now, my refrigerator is lined alphabetically with words I can't remember needing. So those are all those poems were from this, Whales with Legs, which is a $10 book. I can talk after the feature about how to get that book. What do I got left? Like 2 more poems, Jeff? Sound good?
2 more sounds good.
Yeah, all right. I will give
definitely
you.
Want to get that book.
I will definitely tell you how. I will do 2 more poems that I like that are from this book, The End of Lucidity, that I don't think I've read too much to people who haven't been at the Cantab. So this is called Or Anything. Either poetry can change your life or it cannot. Heather suggests to Dean that he should read Anne Carson's autobiography of Red with the same tame words that I recommend: should, enjoy, narrative, story, sexuality, island, family, volcano, red. All these gentle things that flow towards you at a pace that, when compared to the way work and relationships are constantly crashing you against the surprisingly giving rocks of your everyday, seems reasonable. When the book is returned with no new pages folded or creases on the cover, Heather asks how Dean enjoyed it. And Dean says, I mean, it was okay. It didn't change my life or anything. Things that have changed my life are not death and the everyday unfairness of the current police state, but a free granola bar from someone who doesn't want me to adapt to their religious beliefs, or a train that shows up when expected, or poetry. Every poetry changes my life in some way, even grandmother poems detailing which flowers represent which flavor of grief. Heather, because I am speechless, says, changing your life is a pretty high bar for a poetry collection. I just meant, did you like it? Of course, I love the man who suggested I read Autobiography of Red, but not in a manuscript of unrequited lust way. When we met, I confused his native origin for his sexuality, being Scandinavian and being queer, being similar mosaics, when being squinted at through LSD. The confusion was barely an hour and reached the bar of changing my life. Odin and I met, of course, through poetry, as Heather and I met through poetry, as Dean and I met through poetry, as Heather and Dean met through poetry. What is life but a series of friendships forged by an art you sometimes hate? Dean shrugs. A drunk, also student, asked Odin what language people speak in Iceland. Icelandic, he said. Oh, right, said the drunk. And I speak Americanish. Do you speak German or Dutch? What does it take besides a common language to change a life? In Autobiography of Red, a dragonish boy falls in love with an older boy whose love destroys him, which is a modernization of one of the labors of Heracles, which is also every relationship I've ever had. Except that sometimes I'm Dragon Boy Graydon, sometimes I am Heracles, but often I am merely the cattle or a dog destroyed trivially so that Heracles can get at his actual target. No character in a tragedy deserves more sympathy than any other character. Everyone in a tragedy has been deliberately placed in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong person so that misery or jealousy or a volcano of misunderstanding can wipe out the victims. Let the survivors suffer their continued existence. Tragedy is a form of poetry, and poetry is a thing that constantly changes lives, or poetry is a form of living that is a constant state of tragedy, or some Tuesday you'll be in a car blasting Paul's Boutique, eating soft pretzels with someone you care about, and one of you will probably die before the other one. And is all this singing and driving worth the eventual grief? Of course it is. What's wrong with you? So where does the red come in? My hair when I was younger and more certain that what I wrote would never hurt anyone. The fire engine I thought I could grow up to be, the impending middle-aged convertible that might loom had I not surrendered driving so I could live in a city with an art I barely recognized, people constantly leaving. Something as trite as anger? The train I take to work is red. Does that count? Heather asked me if the autobiography of Red changed my life. And of course it has. But how can I put that in the kind of words that will change hers or Dean's? I shrugged. All right, one of the projects that I worked on for a long time, and there's several of in this book, is called Entries from a Terrible Poet's Thesaurus. And what I would do, I would sit at an open mic and I would write down the words that I heard over and over and over again. And then I would write a poem where I tried to define it as over the top as possible. There's a bunch of them in this book. The one I'm going to close with is the word heart. Because who doesn't use the word heart too much in their poems? So this is Entries from a Terrible Poet's Thesaurus, number 5, heart. A series of tubes and muscles the size of a tennis ball. An excuse factory. A poetic term meaning brain. The hub of decision-making. Art, with an H that is not only silent, but also never shuts the fuck up. A metronome. The most important part of a city, according to the people who finance tourism. The innermost piece of lettuce that usually ends up in the sink. Oh yes, the pain that it causes that cannot possibly be blamed on any other organ of the body. Flutter of open wounds and tear ducts. The piece of meat romanticized as important, and yet we are much more likely to eat the ribs designed to protect it. A bird in a cage on a hipster t-shirt. A tattoo designed for archery practice. A twee verb synonymous with like. The shape of 2 hands when joined by the upper knuckles of the fingers and the pads of the thumbs. Fragile noun intended to imply focus. The part of the body most often crossed when lying. Organ routinely hidden when one is pledging allegiance to something sinister. An athletic term often confused for strength. Despite the weapon, what is always the real cause for the bleeding? Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I didn't intend to put together a set list of list poems, but I certainly did a bunch of them tonight.
They were all killer.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for your awesome work. So, typically right now, if we were out at a physical venue, people would pay a few dollars to get into the venue, and then I would use that money to pay the artist who just gave their heart to you. Ha ha ha. But since we're not in a physical venue, and that's not the reality that we're with here, we are in a virtual world. So maybe if Adam would like to put in his Cash App or Venmo or whatever thing like that he has into the chat, then the people here can maybe throw him a couple bucks. If everybody throws him like $2 or $3, that would be like $60. That would be pretty good. Yeah, so if Adam doesn't mind dropping that into the chat. There we go. And then Adam also said he would let us know how to buy his book. I'm somebody that wants to buy the new book.
I've got books available. I run a pop culture store, and our website is paper/ asylum.com. And there's a page on there called Crooked Treehouse Press. And it has all sorts of books on there, mostly by me, but there's a couple other authors, and the 25-year Cantab anthology and some other anthologies are listed there.
Yeah, awesome. If you drop a link for that, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. And the best part of that is you can just order them online, and I have a staff of people whose job it is to ship it to you as quickly as possible. And it's all media mail because there's no ads in it, so it's usually like $5 shipping.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
having a staff is great. I mean, there's only 2 of them, but like, it's awesome.
And Marissa runs a press as well, Red or Green Books.
Nice.
I know she has a whole lot of books coming out right now from a bunch of different poets and anthologies.
I run a workshop also on Saturdays called Someday I Will Learn to Love Writing Poetry. And this summer, we are all putting together manuscripts, hopefully to be put out in the fall. So,
is my mic low?
It was. It's not anymore.
Not anymore. Maybe I just didn't have it aimed at me. But yeah, I've been wanting to go to that workshop of yours. I just it's been a tough time for me to make it.
Well, Saturdays are busy, especially for people with kids.
That's exactly what it is. But yeah, hopefully one of these times I'll be able to make it. I like that it's always the same time, so then at least I'm thinking about it at that time. But yeah, thanks a lot for your poems. They were awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure to drop you a few bucks and pick up that book. All right, I'll stop the recording now.